Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're located today. Firstly, let me introduce myself. My name is Eliot Harper, and I'm a Senior Marketing Technology Architect at CloudKettle. I've been working with Salesforce Marketing Cloud for almost a decade now. I've written books on Marketing Cloud, I'm very active in the user community, and I'm really excited to be presenting this third of a 4-part series on mastering Einstein for Salesforce Marketing Cloud to you today. Now, before we begin, I just wanted to explain this is a live webinar and I'm really keen to answer your questions. But to help the session flow, I won't be pausing to accept questions during my presentation. Instead, you can post any questions to the Q&A panel, which you'll find in the tray in your Zoom application, and my colleague and partner at CloudKettle, John McGinley, will review them and I'll answer them at the end of the presentation. Well, let's begin. In this session, I'll be introducing Einstein Content Selection for Salesforce Marketing Cloud. I'll explain what this feature does, why you should use it, how it actually works, and highlight areas that you need to consider when using Einstein Content Selection. And finally, I'll provide an insight into upcoming product enhancements that we can expect to see in future releases. Firstly, how can you access Einstein in Marketing Cloud? Well, I explained this in my previous webinars, but to recap, Einstein features are available both from the Einstein menu and from Einstein Overview, which appears on the Einstein menu in Salesforce Marketing Cloud. This provides a dashboard indicating overview metrics for each enabled Einstein feature and also indicates which features haven't yet been enabled. Moving your cursor over each metric reveals related summary data. And you can also conveniently navigate to Einstein features right from the Einstein Overview menu. Let's now take a look at Einstein Content Selection in Salesforce Marketing Cloud. Einstein Content Selection is included in Professional, Corporate and Enterprise Marketing Cloud editions. And Einstein Content Selection delivers content that's best suited for each subscriber when an email is sent, based on a variety of factors. So the open that you worked hard to earn is not wasted. And it also helps to optimize email engagement and click-through rates. When you begin sending, Einstein chooses the best asset for each customer's emails from the assets and customer information you supply. Each email is customized for the subscriber it's sent to, using the assets you've provided. As subscribers open your messages, Einstein analyzes click results to identify assets that continually contribute to increased click rates. Using real-time analysis, Einstein finds the assets that prompt customers to click on a link in the email and selects that asset more frequently over future sends. And Einstein Content Selection is designed with marketers in mind. A no-code, drag-and-drop interface helps you automate the entire personalization process. You don't need to build different audience segments or rely on an IT team to write SQL queries. Instead, it empowers marketers to conditionally include relevant content in emails that drive subscriber engagement. Einstein Content Selection also increases the lifespan of your image assets, as it enables you to see how each content performs across different emails at a subscriber level. And you can even set defined rules to determine which piece of content contains certain groups that people should see or shouldn't see. Einstein only stops serving image assets once they've been viewed, have expired, or have been excluded from a certain group, without any need for manual intervention. Finally, Einstein Content Selection provides content-level analytics to inform future strategy. So, why should you use Einstein Content Selection? Well, there are several benefits for both marketing teams and organizations. This feature boosts your click-to-open rate by leveraging AI-led content curation that selects the most relevant asset at the moment of open. It also helps you build effective emails faster by creating one email and then letting AI automate a unique message for every subscriber. On average, you can build an email in 1/6 of the time that it would take to build the same functionality programmatically. Content is optimized at the asset level, and you can even track asset performance across messages in real time to inform your content strategy. Einstein Content Selection solves the problem of not having data or programming expertise, as personalization is driven from your content pool, which provides built-in A/B/N testing that optimizes in real time. So Einstein constantly picks best content more quickly. And this feature is already showing impressive results across Marketing Cloud customers. In one recent case study, an email that used Einstein Content Selection resulted in an 18% greater return on investment, and there was a 22% uplift on a welcome journey that used an email with an Einstein Content Selection block and send time optimization. Einstein Content Selection also lets you overlay your expertise, where you can define rules about what content Einstein should select, which can also increase the lifetime of assets, in addition to aligning with your business goals. To get started using Einstein Content Selection, simply activate the feature from the Einstein Content Selection page in Setup. But how does Einstein Content Selection actually work? Well, at a high level, Einstein analyzes the content available for each subscriber according to the defined business rules to find the image asset they're most likely to click through. And Einstein continuously tracks the asset selections and related clicks, which allows the model to optimize in real time. The model then selects the best content for each subscriber based on their traits and what content is popular. Put another way, subscribers receive the same email but with different content. And this is what Einstein Content Selection helps you achieve. Now, there are 3 different input types used by ECS. Firstly, a content pool with all the metadata. Secondly, consumer profile metadata. And thirdly, some simple business rules. The marketers decide what attributes or metadata are required for assets that are uploaded to the content pool. This could be attributes like activity, product category, and more. Consumer attributes are obtained from the defined consumer profile metadata. And in addition to these, the marketer can define some simple business rules. Now, there are 3 different types of business rules, which are fatigue, exclusion, and must match. The fatigue rule defines how often assets are reused in emails. Now, this helps to keep the content fresh and enables marketers to get the most value out of content that they've paid for or created by continuing to show the assets to subscribers who haven't yet seen them. The exclusion rule gives the engine information that could not otherwise be learned. For example, don't display discounts to premium customers, or don't display credit card offers to minors. And when selected, the must match business rule establishes which consumer attributes and which content attributes must absolutely match. For example, if you have content in multiple languages, then you can create rules so subscribers in respective geographies should receive the respective localized content. The model analyzes the content available for subscribers according to the business rules and selects content that's best for each subscriber, most popular content, and content that has a high likelihood to click. Note that using consumer metadata and business rules is entirely optional. You can use Einstein Content Selection just with the asset class and start and end dates. Now, fallback assets in Einstein Content Selection are defined for each asset class and are displayed when Einstein cannot select an image in a given asset class. While fallback assets are optional, it's important to consider including them, as if Einstein doesn't have enough content or the assets are fatigued out, then Einstein will ultimately need to display an image. In this scenario, Einstein will firstly evaluate the rules to determine an asset to display. Next, it will use a fallback image for that asset class, if it exists. Then, it will try to use an asset class, but ignoring any fatigue rules. And finally, failing that, it will use the contingency image as a last resort that's defined in Einstein Content Selection setup. Now, it's also important to note that start and end dates are currently configured in UTC time, where the asset used will start appearing and expire based on the defined date value, which is evaluated as midnight UTC time. I'll be discussing future enhancements to this behavior later in my presentation. As I mentioned before, Einstein Content Selection is included in all Marketing Cloud editions except the Basic Edition. Now, super messages are consumed when you use Einstein Content Selection in emails. Specifically, 2 super messages are consumed when an email that contains an ECS block or blocks is opened. However, there is no limit on the amount of blocks in an email. So, for an email that contains 1 ECS block or another that contains multiple ECS blocks, both of these emails would only consume 2 super messages. And just to emphasize here, super messages are only consumed when an email is opened. So, if you send an email to 10,000 subscribers and have an open rate of 30%, then you'll consume 6,000 super messages, in addition to the super messages used to send the 10,000 emails. Now, before we dive into a demo, I firstly want to explain more about asset classes, as asset classes are at the core of Einstein Content Selection. So it's important that you understand their appropriate use to ensure that you get the most out of this feature. Asset classes are used to categorize marketing asset images according how the images are used in your messages. Asset classes helps Einstein to make the best, most content-rich selections, so it's important to create an optimized asset class taxonomy. Assets in your asset catalog are the image assets that Einstein Content Selection chooses from. You can add an asset manually or import multiple assets by uploading a CSV file, in addition to editing attributes, which we'll look at shortly. Now, consider the following scenarios. A retail marketer builds promotional emails for recent new product announcements. In each email, the marketer would like to feature new products, and at any time, there could be up to 5 new products. So the marketer creates an asset class named New Products for assets that feature recently released products. Or perhaps a restaurant chain wants to send coupons in their emails. So they could create an asset class named Featured Coupons. Each week, they upload image assets of the coupons. In both of these scenarios, the marketers should choose add and start and end dates to ensure that the assets will only appear in emails for specific duration. Now, asset attributes are similar to asset classes, but they enable you to add additional metadata that describes which asset classes your asset fits into. And then you can create rules to define when the asset should be displayed. For example, in our first scenario, where we're featuring new products, we may change the product based on the subscriber's region, where certain products might only be available in the US and others in Europe. Creating a separate attribute named region and assigning the respective value will enable us to then use the must-match rules to create relationships on the consumer profile attributes, which we'll look at next. Finally, you'll need to configure your asset catalog at a business unit level. So each business unit you're sending emails from uses a different catalog. Well, let's now take a look at Einstein Content Selection in action. From the Einstein Content Selection page in Setup, we can activate this feature by business unit. Here, it's already activated. On this page, we can also define the subscriber identifier, which is used as the subscriber relationship in our profile data extension, which is either the subscriber key or the subscriber ID. And we can choose whether to enable conversion tracking for ECS blocks. We can also set an archiving time period for our assets. This feature will archive assets based on the selected value after the end date you set for an asset. So, if an asset has an end date of July 1 and the archive setting is, let's say, 30 days, then the asset will be archived on July 31. Archived assets are still available in the view, but if you have an asset class where all assets in the class are archived, then this class will automatically be archived and not available in the ECS content block, which we'll look at shortly. And, as I explained earlier, a contingency image is displayed as a last resort. It's important to set an image along with a relevant link URL. Let's now take a look at some additional settings in Einstein Content Selection. Here, we can manage our asset classes. Let's go and do that. We can add a new asset classes or modify existing ones. Let's return to settings. Next, we can configure asset attributes. Now, asset attributes are the additional user-defined metadata that we use to categorize our image assets, which can be used in conjunction with rules. We can define the attribute name in this new attribute modal and supporting values based on our attribute taxonomy, or we can enable users to add their own values when they add new assets, as we can see here. Next, let's look at configuring profile attributes. This Profile Attributes page enables us to define valid field names and values from our consumer profile data extension, which I have open here. From the Manage Attributes button, we can also set our data extension to synchronize on a recurring schedule. We'll return to Settings. Next, the Add Consumer from Data Extension option enables us to select a sendable data extension with the attributes we defined in the previous step. That is, the data extension I just showed you. Let's move on to configuring content selection rules. Here, we can map our consumer and profile attributes, create our exclusion rules, and the fatigue rules that we want Einstein Content Selection to apply. Let me start by explaining attribute mapping. If an attribute in your asset catalog is similar or related to an attribute in your consumer profile data extension, you can connect them here. You can guide Einstein Content Selection by using the Value Must Match option here to force matching. So the attribute's values must be identical, or the asset can't be selected. However, using this option can also limit the number of available assets that Einstein Content Selection can select. So ensure that when the values must match rules are in place, your account still has enough assets, so one can be selected for each subscriber. For example, if we have different attributes with city backgrounds, which must match the city of the subscriber, so perhaps a New York resident sees an image of New York, not San Francisco, we'd select the value must match here. We can see that the asset attribute of city matches the consumer attribute of city. The additional attributes you included in the asset catalog file appear in this first column here. Attributes that you synchronized from your consumer profile data extension appear in the second column. Let's now take a look at exclusion rules. Exclusion rules are conditions that you set and tell Einstein Content Selection when not to select a particular type of asset for a subscriber. For example, if an activity attribute is hiking, then we don't want to display this image if their interest is skiing. So let's go ahead and add a new rule. So we're going to select the asset value of activity is hiking. And then from our consumer profile data extension, I'll go and find the corresponding field, which is interest, and type in skiing. Let's move on to fatigue rules. Fatigue rules prevent a subscriber from seeing the same image more often than you want them to. The default days after selection, days after last click, and selection maximum values appear when you open this page. You can then change these values here. You can set fatigue rules for all asset classes or create a rule for individual assets. Finally, let's look at fallback assets. Fallback assets are defined for each class and are displayed when no matching content is found for a subscriber, if the asset has the fallback option enabled. Now let's move on to asset distribution. From the asset distribution page, we can see the makeup of our asset pool and monitor how many assets are active or expired, and how many assets expire soon. You can also choose to view all assets. From here, we can go and create a new asset, or we can go and bulk upload a CSV file of your asset data. Let's now go and take a look at performance analytics. From the Performance Analytics page, you can find out which assets are performing well, view the performance by asset class or by job, and view performance over time. On this page, we can see content level performance and can filter by different attributes, jobs, or classes. Let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go and filter by the asset class city event. And if I scroll down, scroll down here, I'll be able to watch the metrics dynamically change to see how often a piece of content was selected and its engagement rates, and also filter by content served over different time periods. But how can we add Einstein Content Selection to our emails? Well, let's do that by opening an existing email. To use Einstein Content Selection, we simply drag the content selection block to an available content area. To configure it, we just select an available asset class, and you can see that the interface displays the number of assets available in that asset class, as well as an insight into how many assets are expiring soon. And we're done. Now, Einstein Content Selection brings a new way of thinking to content marketers and approach to building emails. Instead of asking, what email do I need to send on Friday? Marketers need to consider things like, what is in my content pool? Do I have enough images? Or what content is expiring? You see, Einstein Content Selections brings intelligence and efficiency. Content strategy and planning is all about getting the assets in there, then letting the machine do its job. For asset distribution, you need to consider things like, do you have an adequate number of assets in your pool? And what is the longevity of each asset? Are they evergreen, seasonal, or short-term? You'll need to ensure that you set an appropriate start and end date and consider using a fallback image. With business rules, you'll need to identify fatigue rules that are relevant for your audience, along with identifying exclusion rules and profile attribute mapping. For example, perhaps you want to use an exclusion rule to suppress offers to premium customers who consistently make large purchases. And once you define what business rules you want to use, you'll need to identify what content and profile attributes to use to enforce those rules, and what is the attribute relationship for must-match rules. Finally, I'd recommend that you take a phased implementation approach. Start quickly, but small. As I explained earlier, you don't actually need any consumer profile or asset attributes to get started. You can start by running basic A/B testing and then add rules and sophistication from there. Now, so far, I've explained the current features and functionality of Einstein Content Selection. Now, I'd like to share upcoming enhancements that we can expect to see in future releases. But before we do, I need to remind you that Salesforce is a publicly traded company, and you need to base your purchasing decisions on products or services that are already available. Firstly, while Einstein Content Selection only displays image assets, support for other content block types in Content Builder is currently underway and is planned for a future release. Next, you can expect to see support for content-related subject lines in an upcoming release. While Einstein Content Selection currently displays an image at open time, this feature will enable you to determine a supporting subject line to include at send time. The way this feature works is that a supporting subject line is that for a given asset class, for example, hero image, you can define what the matching subject line to display is when the asset is used. You would create and set a corresponding subject line for each asset in that asset class. You can only include one ECS block with content-related subject lines in your email. Other ECS blocks in the email will be rendered at open time, as per the current behavior. Finally, another roadmap item is time and time zone support for start and end dates. As I mentioned earlier, these dates are currently evaluated as midnight UTC time. But this enhancement will enable you to define what time zone is used for these dates, and also define a specific time value when the asset should become available or expire. Well, thank you for attending this session today. I hope you now have a better understanding of Einstein Content Selection, how it works, and how you can start using this powerful feature to drive real-time A/B testing of your emails, while also increasing the lifetime of your assets and maximizing your campaign ROI. We now have plenty of time for questions, and I see there are already some great questions in the Q&A panel. So I'm going to go and pass to my colleague, John McGinley, to moderate that.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Eliot. Another great session. Lots of great information. And you're right. Quite a few questions have been popping in through the course of your presentation. I got a couple easy ones, a couple hard ones, but people are definitely engaged. So without further ado, let's get into it. First one came in. Do you need to manually copy image asset URLs from Content Builder to add records in your asset catalog? Or can you select existing Content Builder image assets?
Yeah, look, that's a really good question. And the answer is no, unfortunately not at this time. So you'll need to go and copy and paste those published image URLs from Content Builder and add the assets' names individually, one at a time. However, there is actually a roadmap item that I didn't mention where in a future release you can expect to see an enhancement that provides the ability for an existing or to select an existing Content Builder asset when adding new assets to the catalog. But as I mentioned before, please base your purchasing decisions on products or services that are already available. But yes, that's on the roadmap.
Forward-looking statement. Another question that came in, and actually this came from a couple of people. I think I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but basically, at least two people have asked around: can you add multiple asset classes for a single asset?
Yeah, look, I mean, the answer is yes and no. So, no, you can't assign more than one asset class per image. And this is by design. It's really intentional, is by assigning multiple asset classes to a single asset would really result in confusion in interpreting the asset performance. However, my recommendation would actually be to create duplicate image assets and set them to different asset classes respectively. And this would also enable you to have much better discrete control, as you can set start and end dates at a asset class level.
Great answer. I think that's great advice. Question came in, and this is it's a bit of a mouthful, so I'm going to read it slowly. So on the homepage of a website, I have some content which is used to display for visitors who are coming for the first time to the site. How can I make it dynamic so that if a visitor is identified, that same content is not visible to him or her after the first visit?
So Einstein Content Selection only works with emails or in emails. Now, having said that, technically the way the feature works is that actually, and you can look at the source code, you can see that it inserts an image URL. And that image URL has a unique identifier, and when you go and the subscriber opens the email, that image is rendered at send time. So, in theory, you can go and take that image source attribute code by just dragging an email to a content block and use that on a website, for example. Now, there are some additional attributes that are passes across that's related to the send. But in short, I guess that's somewhat of a I wouldn't say a hack, but a unique approach. Einstein Content Selection really isn't optimized for that specific scenario. There may be ways that you can achieve similar results, but you should really be looking at a product like Interaction Studio to deliver that kind of personalization.
There you go. Actually, another great idea there. One question that came in is, what if images aren't downloaded in the mail client? Then normally an open is not registered in Marketing Cloud. So in this case, the open is registered and not counted as a super message?
Yeah, that's right. So some email clients don't load images by default. That is, the user would have to go and choose to manually download those images, particularly for spam emails, I think. But in that scenario, it wouldn't get counted as super messages as no images are opened.
Perfect. Thank you. Our friend Ruben, who has consistently served up questions all three sessions now.
Awesome.
Thank you, Ruben. Does this have any limitation in email clients like Outlook, as interactive email has?
No.
Also, does this work with any type of content or only images, which I think you partly answered?
So first answer is no, there are no limitations. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's just retrieving or downloading an image from an image URL. It will just work in any email clients that support HTML emails. Obviously, apart from devices that don't support HTML, like an Apple Watch, for example, which would display the text-only version. And as I mentioned before, I find actually the name Einstein Content Selection somewhat misleading. It should be Einstein Image Selection, for that is what it does. But it's really a hint of what we can expect to see in a future release. And as I hinted before, this is something that Salesforce are currently working on, and that is the ability to have other content block types that you created in Content Builder, such as freeform or HTML or those will be available in a future release.
Speaking of images, Courtney had a question. Do these images all have to be the same size? And if they're not, what happens?
Yeah, wow, that's an awesome question. So, it's a good question. I'd have to go and check the code actually, and go and check the width and height attributes assigned to the image tag. I suspect that they're not defined because Einstein Content Selection just wouldn't know that when you go and set the image. So it has to display an image, but I would, and I encourage you to go and test this, I would assume that, in fact, it's such a great question. I'm just going to go and check right now. So, because we've got plenty of time and you can't see my screen, but that's okay. I'm just going to jump to my code view for that block I created and scroll down, and I can see content area. Come to me, please. And maybe it's no. Here we go. Coming to me. I've got lots of different other blocks on the page. Now I'm looking here. I see the actual code. I see the href, job ID, image source. Width and height is set to auto, and the style is max width 100%. So it would, it wouldn't skew those images. It would just display them at the actual width and height of the actual image when they're served.
Perfect. Thank you. Another question. If I want to send a product email and have Einstein select several product images from an asset class, would content selection support that, or is it only for a single image?
Can you say that question one more time, please?
Sure, yeah. If I wanted to send a product email and have Einstein select several product images from an asset class, would content selection support that, or is it only for a single image?
Oh, I see. In that case, you would need to have multiple ECS blocks, but then again, it would be potentially challenging, because you obviously don't want to display, or you want to ensure that the same image isn't displayed. So you could go and set a rule in your fatigue rules to say only show this image once per subscriber. You just need to obviously ensure that you have sufficient assets in your asset pool to enable you to go and display those. So it is technical. Technically, yes, it is possible using ECS. And look, I'd say it really depends on your use case. If these are product recommendations, then you should really look at Einstein email recommendations, which are covering in our webinar next week. So stay tuned for that.
So this just in from Douglas to you, Eliot, and I don't know if this is a question or a comment. It says ECS will automatically dedupe across multiple blocks in the same email.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Doug. So Doug is a product manager at Salesforce. In fact, the product manager for ECS. So that's awesome. Thank you, Doug, for confirming that. That's awesome.
Thank you, Doug. I had another question regarding reporting. Reporting content selection for reporting is the Discover reporting tool. Can that be used, or if yes, does it show which asset class performed better? So maybe spend a minute or two talking about the reporting elements.
Yeah. So look, I'm not sure about Discover. I assume not, and Doug can certainly go and add a comment or question. He's obviously probably more equipped to answer that question than I am. But I'm not. I don't believe that that will be available in Discover reporting. Performance analytics gives you very granular reporting, but that doesn't roll up into Discover reporting.
Gotcha. This one just in from Yan. Can we think of Einstein Content Selection as a kind of next best offer by recommending an email image related to a product based on a customer profile?
Well, yes and no. Not really. It's not what it does. Next best offer and creating those that waterfall business rules is really a function of Interaction Studio. So it doesn't make recommendations, but it's really for different use case.
Perfect. Well, that is the last question in here now. We're at about 45-minute point. Anything else you wanted to add before we call it a day here? I know there was a couple of questions last time about getting copies of this, and
Sure.
remind the people that it is available on the YouTube channel, and maybe give them a bit of a hint of what is coming next.
Yeah, thanks, John. So yes, a copy of this recording will be available and sent out within 48 hours. So please keep a lookout for that. Also, it's available, or will be available, on our YouTube channel, where you can also see recordings of previous Einstein webinars. So head over to youtube.com, search for Cloud Kettle, and make sure you subscribe to our channel to keep up to date of recent and upcoming webinars and other great Salesforce content. So next week, we're running the last and fourth in our webinar series on Mastering Einstein for Salesforce Marketing Cloud, where I'll be covering Einstein email and web recommendations. So please make sure that you subscribe to that if you're not subscribed already.
Yeah, that's going to be an exciting one. I think your challenge will be to keep that one contained, because there's a lot to be covered there.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I presented on email and web recommendations many times, and this is a training course that typically goes for 8 hours. So trying to condense that into less than an hour is going to be, I've got my work cut out, but I'm really looking forward to it.
I am as well. So again, thank you very much. You've enlightened us today. And I look forward to next week, and hopefully these folks will all join us.
Thanks, John. Okay, hope to see you all next time. Bye.